This is not just a Hitman reskin, the new Bond game plays by entirely different rules. And some of those rules will surprise you. You probably don't need me to tell you that 007 First Light is a big deal for IO Interactive. The fact that they are rebuilding the spy genre from the ground up should be enough of a hint. We've sifted through every preview, developer interview, and spec sheet to bring you 15 essential things you must know before you buy. Starting with something foundational. Forget the generic skill trees you have seen in other action games. First Light splits Bond's growth into 3 distinct pillars: combat, gadgets, and social. This is not about grinding for a 5% damage boost. You unlock entirely new physical takedowns in combat, craftable ammunition types in gadgets, and conversational gambits in social that can defuse a hostage situation. It feels less like an RPG and more like attending a finishing school for spies. You are actually learning the craft, and the abilities reflect that. IO Interactive has no interest in bloating their world with meaningless collectibles. Creative director Christian Elverdam confirmed a focused, globe-trotting narrative that clocks in around 20 hours. That is the critical path. A tight espionage thriller with great pacing. However, the level design retains that Hitman-esque density. If you chase optional objectives and observe enemy routines, you will squeeze considerably more time out of every exotic location. It respects your time, without wasting a second of it. In most games, a tuxedo is just a texture swap. Here, your wardrobe is a strategic tool. Wearing a tailored suit grants you access to high society casinos and cocktail parties without a second glance from security. Swap to tactical gear. The guards get suspicious, but you gain marginal armor protection. The system forces you to weigh social camouflage against physical safety. You will often stand in front of a mirror before a mission, genuinely weighing the trade-offs. That is not fashion, that is tradecraft. This might sting for completionists, but hear the reasoning. The team has designed Bond's psychological arc with a definitive beginning, middle, and end. There is no new game plus, because you cannot replay a shattered psyche from a position of strength. IOI's head writer, Michael Vogt, noted that restarting with all your gadgets would undermine the tension of a rookie agent finding his footing. You play the origin story as it was written. That commitment to narrative integrity is rare, even if it means 0 replay carryover. The studio has been very clear. No branching endings. James Bond is a hero, and heroes do not flip a coin on saving the world. Your choices throughout the game shape how allies and enemies perceive you, and they certainly lock you out of certain intelligence briefings. But the final destination is fixed. You are steering the emotional tone of the story, not the destination. For a character this iconic, that feels like the correct call. You are playing Bond's history, not a what-if simulation. The difficulty options here are more nuanced than a simple easy hard toggle. There is operative for the story purist, agent for the balanced experience, and 00 agent for a brutal realistic challenge, where one bullet can end you. Dig into the menus and you will find a custom slider. You can independently set the intelligence of the AI, the damage you receive, and the awareness of security cameras. I particularly recommend playing on agent with camera awareness cranked up. It captures that paranoid behind enemy lines feeling perfectly. IO has finally published the complete PC specifications, and beyond the usual minimum and recommended, they have revealed 2 distinct enthusiast tiers. For high settings at 1440p and a locked 60 frames per second, you will need a Core i5 13500 or Ryzen 5 7600, 16 GB of RAM, and a GPU packing 12 GB of VRAM. Think RTX 4070 or RX 7800 XT. Step up to high settings at 4K 60 frames per second, and the CPU and RAM do not change at all. Only the graphics card jumps to an RTX 4080 or RX 7900 XTX, each with 16 GB of VRAM. The visual payoff remains that huge boost in crowd density and draw distance. Then there is the true Ultra preset. 4K with everything pushed to the maximum. The spec sheet demands an RTX 5080, 32GB of system RAM, and either a Core i5-13600K or Ryzen 7 7700X. But here's the catch. That eye-catching 200 plus frames per second figure relies entirely on DLSS 4.5. IOI has not shared native performance numbers, so we simply do not know how it runs without upscaling. The reassuring news is that every other preset, minimum, recommended, and both enthusiast tiers achieves its stated frame rate without leaning on DLSS at all. And a final warning, Ultra textures still require 16GB of VRAM. A 12GB card will choke, so keep your texture setting on high. The PC version has been treated with uncommon care. You get full support for DLSS 4, FSR 3.1, and XESS 2 right out of the gate. That means super resolution and frame generation, regardless of your GPU brand. Plus, there is native 32:9 ultra-wide support, uncapped frame rates, and a full field of view slider. Even the DualSense controller's haptic feedback and adaptive triggers work natively over a wired connection. IO Interactive is a studio born on PC, and this port feels like a love letter to that audience. The accessibility suite here is a masterclass in inclusive design. You can activate a high contrast mode to make enemies and interactable objects pop against the cinematic backgrounds. There is a full audio description mode for the cutscenes, narrated by a calm, neutral voice. Motor accessibility is addressed too, and with options to hold buttons instead of tapping and granular aim assist strength. Even a screen reader is available for the weapon wheel and menu navigation. This ensures that the fantasy of being a super spy is open to absolutely every player. Console players get the expected duality. On Series X and PS5, quality mode targets a native 4K at 30 frames per second, complete with ray traced reflections on glass and water. Performance mode drops the resolution to a dynamic 1440p but locks the frame rate at 60. The recommendation here is performance. The fluidity of the combat and stealth is simply too responsive to sacrifice for shinier puddles. A word of warning for Series S owners, you are locked to 1080p at 30 frames, with no ray tracing and no performance toggle. The gap between the S and X is significant here. I know this phrasing sounds confusing, so let me clarify. The entire campaign, all 20 hours of it, is playable completely offline with no internet connection required. However, a separate mode called MI6 Network features rotating global events, time-limited assassination contracts, and worldwide leaderboards. That mode requires an online connection and an IOI account. You can ignore it entirely and keep a 100% offline single-player experience. The box saying online connection required refers only to those live service elements, not the story. If you are the type who might start on console and later want to switch to PC, you are covered. First Light supports full cross progression through an IOI account. Your save file, unlocked skills, and wardrobe items follow you seamlessly between Steam, Epic, Xbox, and PlayStation. You do have to buy the game again on the new platform. There is no cross-buy, but you will not lose any progress. It is a smart, consumer-friendly feature, one I wish more blockbuster games would bother to implement. Do not hold out hope for a free trial before launch. IO Interactive has officially confirmed there will be no public demo. Their reasoning: a tightly scripted vertical slice cannot possibly represent the systemic, reactive nature of the final game without giving away major story beats. I actually appreciate the honesty here. A demo of a Hitman level makes sense, but a debut Bond adventure relies on momentum and surprise. Cutting out a chunk of the narrative would do the full product a disservice. The Deluxe Edition offers a few tempting but ultimately cosmetic incentives. You get 3 days of early access starting June 13th. The Spectre Operative Skin Pack with 3 classic villain-era outfits, and a digital art book. The only gameplay-adjacent item is the Q-Sonic Distraction Device, a gadget that emits a localized audio pulse to lure guards. It is useful, but not game-breaking. You are not buying power, you are buying access and style. If you have the patience to wait until the 16th, the Standard Edition is perfectly complete. You made it to the end. True Rat Pack. Drop a like, subscribe, and tell us, what should we cover next?